The kick serve is one of the most desired shots in all of tennis, but unfortunately, it's also the shot that has the most misconceptions and bad advice surrounding it. In this video, I'll dispel the myths, explain the reality of hitting a real kick serve, and show you step-by-step drills that you can do to hit one yourself. So first things first, what type of spin is a kick serve actually? The details here are really important. If we get off track, it's going to lead you down a path of bad serves and bad results. This phrase is critical. The face sends it. That means at the moment of contact, wherever the strings are facing, the ball is going to travel starting in that direction. The path bends it means whatever direction the racket is traveling on its swing path, at that moment the ball touches the strings. That's what gives the ball a certain type of spin or rotation. That curves the ball or bends it. So this red arrow represents the path of the ball, and this ball represents the back of a ball being made contact with. Where the arrow is right now is a topspin swing path. At the moment of contact, the racket traveling from below and then upwards makes the ball spin straight end over the top. That creates high pressure over the top of the ball, low pressure on the bottom of the ball, and it pushes the ball downwards. That's what bends the ball or curves the ball downwards. So here's an example of that. Here's Rafael Nadal hitting a forehand ground stroke with topspin. Look at the ball rotating end over end. You can see the writing on the ball rotating towards its target with topspin. What gives the ball topspin is at the moment of contact, Rafa's racket is pretty close to horizontal, not quite horizontal, but pretty close. And that means as his racket travels through this circular path, watch how the racket comes upwards. It's got a circular path as the tip of the racket curves around. And at the point of contact, his racket is predominantly traveling in this direction. That's what makes the ball spin over the top, aka topspin, and that's what curves or curls or bends the ball down into the court on the other side. Now back to our handy dandy tennis ball. This is the direction of the swing path of the racket, and now this is the direction that the racket travels for a slice serve. This is a righty with the racket traveling from left to right across the back of the ball, straight from left to right. That's going to cause the ball to rotate sideways and curve from right to left as it travels to the other side of the court. Here's a real-life example of one of my recent students hitting a slice serve. Her racket at the point of contact is traveling from left to right. At contact, her racket is almost straight up and down, and it's traveling in this direction at the instant that the ball touches the strings. If you trace the tip of the racket as it moves back and forth, you'll see that just like Rafa's ground stroke, the tip of her racket is traveling in an arc. Just about all good tennis shots have this in common. The tip of the racket travels through some kind of circular path. We're going to get back to that in just a second. So this would be the swing path for a topspin serve, like a serve that just had pure topspin. This would be the swing path for a serve that would just have side spin, aka a slice serve. This is the swing path for a kick serve, a serve that has some characteristics of a slice, aka it's going to move a little bit from right to left and then back out right again. We'll talk about that more a little bit. But it also has some characteristics of topspin. The ball curves from high to low and then kicks high after the bounce. Let's go back to that serve of Isner that we saw in the intro. This is a kick serve, and I want you to watch closely as his racket travels past the ball. Just like the Nadal and my student example, look at how the tip of the racket travels in a circular path. But here, as his racket touches the ball right at this instant, I want you to look at the alignment of the racket. His racket is not straight up and down. That would be the swing path for creating slice. His racket is also not sideways. That would be the swing path for creating topspin. He's somewhere in between. This is the angle of his racket as he makes contact, which means at the instant the ball touches the strings, his racket is traveling in this direction. And because, remember, the racket is traveling in a circle. It's traveling in an arced path as it goes from the left side of the ball to the right side of the ball. And that's what gives the kick serve its characteristics. Watch the ball, how initially it curves a little bit inwards from right to left. And so it kind of looks like it's going to continue moving in this direction, but then it kicks back out again to the right. The direction of the rotation of the ball is kind of a mix of slice and topspin. And so when this ball lands, instead of continuing to curve to the left like a slice serve, and instead of just bouncing straight up like a ball that would have topspin, the ball kicks more out to the right than the direction that it started in, and that's where this serve gets its name. Winning at tennis is much more than just how you swing your racket. Sure, being able to hit a kick serve is great, but without good tactics and strategy, you're still going to lose a lot, which is why I set up tennissecret.com, where you can go sign up for free right now to learn some special patterns and strategies that will half the amount of running you have to do and also cut in half the number of errors that you're going to make in your very next match. Go check it out right now. It's going to help you improve fast. We're going to get to step-by-step drills on how to hit a kick serve in a second, but first, it's critical to understand some of the terrible information out there and myths surrounding the kick serve quickly. You do not hit a kick serve by curling the racket from the bottom of the ball around to the top of. I've seen this motion demonstrated by very well-known, like elite level coaches suggesting that this is how kick serve topspin is made. It's not. I've also heard it suggested, that you've heard this for sure, 7 o'clock to 2 o'clock. But what I'm getting at here is not necessarily the direction, because remember the tennis ball we looked at in a second. It's not the path of the racket that I'm talking about, but this whole idea of like carving or like curling the racket around the ball just simply doesn't happen. I'll show you why in a second. We're also not brushing up the back of the ball. The racket is not traveling from below straight upwards like that Rafael Nadal topspin forehand. Instead, we're going at an angle. Directionally, I like the 7 o'clock to 2 o'clock thing. The direction of the racket as contact is made is traveling in this direction. But it's critical to understand that the ball is only in contact with the strings for about 5/1000ths of a second. Not nearly, not even in the ballpark, enough time to be able to do any kind of curling or carving or any kind of manipulation with the hand or the racket. It happens in a split second, and whatever direction the racket is traveling at that split second, that's what kind of spin is on the ball. Let's dig a little bit deeper into that. Here's a Roger Federer serve that is a first serve. He's trying to hit this ball through the court with maximum power and speed. And the reason why the ball doesn't bounce very high and it gets to his hitting partner on the other side very, very fast. And also notice the lack of curve and the lack of spin. This ball isn't kicking or curving or have any kind of bend to it. And that's because as he hits this ball, watch the alignment of the racket. Here's contact right here. Look at how much higher his racket's alignment here is at the point of contact. And now I want you to watch the direction that the racket travels. When Roger releases through the point of contact, the tip of his racket is predominantly going out towards the other side of the court. You could call this maybe, I don't know, it's probably pointing towards about this person in black, releasing out in that direction. So it's not directly in line with his target, but it's very close to that direction. Also, as he makes contact, look at where his chest is facing, probably about the net post or so. See how his body is aligned here? That's because his energy and his momentum is coming around from his body, and he's releasing the racket out in the direction of the other side of the court. So now compare that to a kick serve. Watch the difference here. First of all, watch the difference in the contact point. As he meets the ball, look at how much more angle there is on the racket. Now his racket is aligned much more to the left, which means the racket is starting to travel much more in an upward direction. And so this is creating that 7 o'clock to 2 o'clock direction of swing path. Also, look at the alignment of his chest. Look at contact, how now he's not facing the net post. His chest and his hips are facing along the baseline. That's because what he's doing here is he's throwing his arm and throwing his racket in this direction, sideways. Now the tip of his racket is traveling out along the baseline, kind of towards the crowd, out to the side, out to the right. And that rainbow path of the racket traveling from left to right across the back of the ball is what's creating that kick. It's what's creating that bend and that jump up on the other side of the court because of the direction of the rotation on the ball. Now I'm going to take you step by step through 4 drills that I used with a student just recently to take her from no meaningful spin to lots and lots of spin and well on her way to being able to hit a real kick serve. So here's progression number 1. She's turning forwards like what we saw from Roger. She's exaggerating a little bit for right now, which is good. And then she's throwing her racket slowly along the center service line. So we're using this line as an anchor to get her to feel the difference between a direct, flat delivery of the racket and what she's doing next is a sideways delivery of the racket. And the reason why we're standing here in the middle of the service line is we're using the service line to help guide her path for the spin once. So watch this swing path again. Remember that kind of arced, like rainbow path that we saw from the professional players? Now she's tracing that. Also notice how her shoulders and the front of her body are now more facing out to the side so that she can deliver the racket in that direction. And this is getting her on her way to being able to hit past the ball and bend it with a lot of spin. Drill number 2 from the same position is having her alternate between a shadow swing where she practices that sideways path and then an actual toss and an actual hit. Now she's starting to hit past the back of the ball and eventually we're going to get her into an upward direction, but for now I'm just trying to get her to feel what it's like to actually swing past the ball and bend it instead of getting locked into a forward path, which is what most tennis players are doing. So watch the replay of this last one that she just hit. Look at how her racket is now traveling upwards and out to the side as she's hitting. By the way, we're not caring at all where the ball goes as of right now. We're just trying to get the fundamentals correct and get her feeling what it's like to hit past the ball. After getting some solid success at spinning the ball from up on the service line, I brought her back to no man's land. We happen to have a quick start line here, and so she can still use that as an anchor, which is fantastic to help guide her with her swing path. And so we're just alternating again between a shadow swing and an actual hit. And look at the curve on that last serve. This is a player that had no bend previously, no curve. And watch how the ball starts on the red line here. And as she swings past the ball is initially going to start off moving to the right, but then watch how as it travels through the air, it bends, curves, and comes back into the left again, and then continues moving to the left. By the time it bounces for the second time, it almost gets back to where it started. So I know some of you at this point are saying, well, that's a slice serve, Ian. It's curving from right to left. Where's the kick? We're watching a kick serve video. It's critical. Just please understand that most of you watching haven't even begun to feel what it's like to just get yourself aligned sideways and throw the racket out to the side. And once we start getting this type of spin consistently, then we can start bringing the contact point a little further to the left and bringing her racket a little bit more angled to the left so that her swing path is a little bit more moving up and to the right, and that'll give her a little more topspin. And it's just incremental once you really start actually hitting past the ball and bending it for real. After a few more practice ones in no man's land, I took her back to the baseline, and now she's using the baseline as her directional guide. And now as we look at her actually hitting these for real, look at the direction her racket is traveling. So as she makes contact right here, the racket is mostly up and down, but it hasn't quite reached its peak yet. So now she's starting to hit a little bit of topspin. The racket is slightly still going upwards. It hasn't reached its vertical limit yet. So it is still a little bit going upwards. She's making a little bit of topspin, but mostly side spin. And now the process from here, once you start to get this down and you're hearing that nice click sound of the strings, you're seeing a nice bend in the ball, is now progressively, a little bit at a time, bring the ball a little bit more to the left, make contact with your racket angled a little bit more to the left so that it's slightly more coming upwards, and then you'll start to see the ball curve a little bit more high to low instead of just right to left. And look at this contrast between where she started on the right. This is her original second serve. Look at where her shoulders are facing. Look where her body is facing. And look at the alignment of her racket. It's vertical and it's going forwards. You can't ever make any kind of spin this way, much less topspin, much less a kick serve. And look at on the left. Now she's more sideways. She's throwing the racket out to the side. And now she's bending the ball and curving it, and she's on her way to creating a real kick serve. Does she still have a lot of work to do? Absolutely, but at least now she's on the right track, and these are the progressions I recommend you follow to get yourself on the right track and start moving towards a real kick serve. If you want to make your serve more smooth and flowing and effortless, then make sure to check out this video on the screen right now. It's my favorite serve progressions to learn how to do a proper fundamental throwing motion and really accelerate your serve.